Welcome back to Reliable Prepper. Today we're going to address something that doesn't get talked about enough in the prepping world. The fact that being prepared doesn't always guarantee survival. I know, that sounds counterintuitive. You've got your stockpile, your bug-out bag, maybe even a bunker, and you think, I'm set, I'm ready for anything. But here's the hard truth. Many preppers fail, even though they've done a lot to get ready. And the reasons they fail, they're not always obvious. We're going to break down the most common reasons preppers fail despite their best efforts, and more importantly, how you can avoid making those same mistakes. If you're serious about survival, stick with me because this video might just save you a ton of heartache and wasted effort. Before we jump in, I want to quickly say, if you find value in this kind of content, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm always digging into real-world survival strategies, prepping tips, and how to navigate the chaos that might come our way. And hey, don't forget to grab my free bi-weekly newsletter. Subscribers get access to my ebook, Surviving Civil Unrest, a complete guide. It's packed with actionable tips you can use today. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with overconfidence. This one is huge. You'd be amazed how many people think that just because they've got a bunch of supplies, they're ready for whatever comes their way. I see it all the time. Preppers who've spent thousands on food, water, and gear, but when you ask them when they last checked their stuff, they just kind of shrug. That's complacency creeping in, and it's a killer. Here's an example. Let's say you've got a year's worth of canned food stored in your basement. Feels good, right? But when's the last time you checked the expiration dates? Or rotated those cans to make sure you're not wasting your investment? And what about your water storage? Have you tested it lately to make sure it's still drinkable? Complacency leads to cracks in your plan, and those cracks can get real big, real fast in an emergency. Another big part of this is people sticking to outdated plans. Maybe you came up with a survival strategy 5 years ago, but life has changed since then. Maybe your family has grown, or you've moved to a different area. If you don't update your plan, you're preparing for a situation that doesn't exist anymore. Regularly reviewing and updating your strategy is just as important as creating it in the first place. And let's not forget drills. A lot of preppers think that because they've got the gear, they're good to go. But have you ever tested it? Do you know how to use that fancy water filter you bought? Have you practiced what you'd do if your power went out for a week? Drills and simulations aren't just for the military. They're for anyone who wants to be truly prepared. Now let's talk about the gear trap. This is one I see all the time, and it's so easy to fall into. You start prepping, you hit the internet, and suddenly, it's like Christmas morning for survival gear. There's a gadget for everything. Water filters, solar chargers, tactical flashlights. And don't get me wrong, gear is important, but it's not the whole picture. Let me give you a scenario. You've bought the most expensive water filtration system on the market. It's sitting in your closet, still in the box, and you feel great knowing you've got it. But here's the kicker. Have you ever actually taken it out, figured out how it works, and tested it with dirty water? Because in a real crisis, when you're dehydrated and desperate, that's not the time to be reading the instructions or realizing it doesn't work the way you thought it would. The same goes for things like firearms. A lot of preppers invest in weapons for home defense, and that's smart. But owning a gun doesn't automatically make you ready to defend yourself. If you don't practice regularly, under stress, and in scenarios where your heart rate is elevated, you're setting yourself up for failure. The reality is, stress changes everything. Your fine motor skills degrade, your decision-making slows down, and suddenly, that gun isn't the safety net you thought it was. Skills like situational awareness, quick decision-making, and even hand-to-hand self-defense are just as important as owning a weapon. And here's a lesser-known truth. Your skills will last a lifetime, but gear has a shelf life. That high-tech gadget might break, batteries can die, or you could lose it entirely. Skills, on the other hand, can't be taken from you. If you know how to make a fire with nothing but a knife and some kindling, you'll never have to rely on fancy fire starters. If you can navigate using the stars, you don't need GPS. Building skills should always be a higher priority than buying gear, no matter how tempting that next shiny gadget looks. This next one is a biggie, and it's something a lot of preppers overlook: mental and physical preparedness. Let's start with the mental side. Surviving a crisis isn't just about what you have or what you know, it's about how you handle the pressure. And let me tell you, A real-life survival scenario is nothing like the movies. It's messy, unpredictable, and often terrifying. If you're not mentally ready to face that, even the best plans can fall apart. Think about this. When the power goes out for days, tempers flare, people panic. If you're with family, there might be arguments, especially if things don't go as planned, and to keep your emotions in check, even when everyone around you is losing theirs. This isn't something that comes naturally for most people, but the good news is, it's something you can work on. Start by putting yourself in mildly stressful situations on purpose. Maybe try a weekend camping trip where you leave all your gadgets at home, or do a mock blackout day where you live without electricity and see how you cope. These kinds of exercises help build your mental resilience and give you a small taste of the challenges you might face in a real crisis. Now let's talk about physical preparedness, which is just as important, if not more so. Here's the thing. Survival often requires physical exertion, and a lot of people underestimate just how demanding that can be. If you're bugging in, you might have to carry heavy supplies, chop wood, or even defend yourself physically. If you're bugging out, you could be walking for miles carrying a fully loaded backpack. That takes strength, endurance, and stamina. Unfortunately, a lot of preppers skip this part. Maybe they think their stockpile will keep them safe without much effort, or they assume they'll be fine when the time comes. But here's the truth. If you're not in decent shape, you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage. You don't need to be an athlete, but incorporating some kind of physical fitness into your routine can make a massive difference. Simple things like walking, lifting weights, or doing body weight exercises can go a long way in preparing your body for the challenges of survival. And let's not forget about nutrition and overall health. If you've got untreated medical conditions or you're dependent on daily medications, that's a vulnerability in a long-term crisis. Work on improving your health now, so you're not caught off guard if access to medical care becomes limited. Being in good physical condition isn't just about strength, it's about increasing your chances of staying alive when things get tough. This one is a silent killer for preppers' rigid planning. Don't get me wrong, planning is critical. You need a framework, a roadmap to guide your decisions during a crisis. But where people get into trouble is when they stick to their plan no matter what, even when the situation calls for flexibility. Here's an example. Let's say you've got an evacuation route planned out. It's perfect on paper, short, direct, and easy to follow. But what happens if that route is blocked by traffic, downed trees, or law enforcement checkpoints? If you've only got one plan and no alternatives, you're stuck. The same goes for your bug-out location. Maybe you've picked a remote cabin as your safe zone, but what if someone else gets there first? Or what if the area becomes unsafe due to wildfires or flooding? Without backup plans, even the best strategies can fall apart. The key is to build flexibility into your plans from the start. Instead of one evacuation route, map out 3 or 4. Instead of a single bug-out location, identify multiple places you could go, even if they're not ideal. And don't forget to think about worst-case scenarios. What will you do if you can't leave at all? If your plan doesn't account for the unexpected, it's not a plan, it's a wish. Adaptability isn't just about having backup plans, it's also about your mindset. You have to be willing to change course when new information comes in or when the situation evolves. This is why practicing scenarios is so important. When you simulate a crisis, you're not just testing your gear. You're testing your ability to adapt and think on your feet. The more you practice, the more confident and flexible you'll be when the real thing happens. Another huge mistake preppers make is thinking they can do it all alone. Look, I get the appeal of the lone wolf mentality. It feels empowering to think you can rely on just yourself. But the reality is, humans are social creatures. We survive best when we work together. And that's especially true in a crisis. A lot of preppers overlook the value of building a network. This could be as simple as getting to know your neighbors or as complex as forming a mutual aid group with like-minded people. The point is, having allies makes you stronger. If you're sick or injured, someone else can step in to help. If you're facing a threat, a group is much harder to overpower than an individual. And when it comes to pooling resources, skills, and knowledge, a community can achieve far more than any one person. The problem is, building trust takes time, and a lot of people aren't willing to invest in it. But here's the thing. Waiting until a crisis hits to start building relationships is too late. You need to lay that groundwork now, when things are calm. Start by having conversations with your neighbors. Find out who's open to the idea of mutual support. Look for local prepping groups or online communities where you can connect with others. Even small steps like sharing gardening tips with a neighbor can build trust over time. Collaboration doesn't mean giving up your independence or exposing your preps to everyone. It means being strategic about who you trust and finding ways to work together when it matters most. A strong community isn't a weakness. It's a force multiplier. Let's shift gears and talk about resource management. This one is deceptively tricky. On the surface, it seems simple. Stock up on what you need, and you're good to go. But managing those resources over the long term, that's where things get complicated. One of the biggest mistakes preppers make is not rotating their supplies. Food and water have expiration dates, and if you're not paying attention, you could end up with a stockpile full of spoiled or unusable items. And it's not just about checking expiration dates, it's also about using and replacing supplies regularly. If you're not eating the food you've stored, how do you know you'll actually like it? Or that it won't upset your stomach when you're already stressed out? Another issue is over-reliance on certain types of resources. For example, a lot of preppers focus on canned goods because they're convenient and have a long shelf life. But eating nothing but canned food for weeks on end can lead to nutritional deficiencies and even health problems. Variety is key. Mix in freeze-dried meals, bulk grains, and even some comfort foods to keep morale up during a crisis. Then there's the problem of overconsumption. In a stressful situation, it's easy to burn through supplies faster than you planned. This is where rationing comes into play. Knowing how to stretch your resources and make them last is just as important as having them in the first place. Simple strategies like portion control, avoiding waste, and reusing items where possible can make a huge difference in the long run. All right, let's talk about security, because this is an area where a lot of preppers fall short. It's one thing to have a stockpile. It's another thing to keep it safe. In a real crisis, your supplies become a target, and if you're not ready to defend them, you might as well hand them over. A lot of people think security begins and ends with owning a firearm. While having a gun is definitely a good idea for home defense, it's not the whole picture. Security is about layers. You want to make your home a hard target, meaning it's not worth the effort for someone to try breaking in. This includes things like reinforced doors, window locks, motion sensor lights, and even something as simple as a barking dog. The harder you make it for someone to get in, the less likely they are to try. Operational security, or OPSEC, is another critical piece of the puzzle. This is all about keeping your preparations under the radar. If everyone in your neighborhood knows you're the prepper, guess whose house they're coming to when things go south? Keep your plans, your stockpile, and even your habits as private as possible. That means no showing off your gear on social media or casually mentioning how much food you've stored. The less people know, the safer you'll be. Let's take this a step further. Security isn't just about physical barriers. It's also about situational awareness. Being aware of your surroundings and noticing unusual behavior can stop a threat before it even reaches your door. For example, if you notice someone scoping out your property, that's a red flag. Maybe it's nothing, but maybe it's someone planning to come back when they think no one's home. Little things like this can make a huge difference in preventing an attack or theft. Another layer of security to consider is deterrence. People are less likely to mess with a house that looks defended. Something as simple as posting a "Beware of Dog" sign, even if you don't have a dog, can make intruders think twice. Likewise, visible security cameras, real or fake, send a clear message that your home is being watched. These small steps can make your property less attractive to would-be intruders. But let's not sugarcoat this. If someone is determined to break in, they might still try. That's why having a plan for how to respond is critical. Do you know where your family will go if someone breaches your home? Do you have a safe room or a designated escape route? And if you do have to defend your home, are you prepared to do so effectively? These are tough questions, but they're ones every prepper needs to answer. This is another area where preppers often drop the ball, focusing on short-term emergencies without considering the long game. Don't get me wrong, it's great to be ready for things like hurricanes, power outages, or even civil unrest. But what happens if the crisis doesn't end in a week or a month? What if it drags on for years? Long-term preparedness requires a completely different mindset. It's not just about stockpiling supplies, it's about sustainability. For example, you might have 6 months worth of food stored, but what happens when that runs out? Do you have a way to grow your own food? Do you have seeds, tools, and the knowledge to use them? Gardening isn't as easy as it looks, and if you've never done it before, now is the time to start learning. The same goes for water. Sure, you might have several gallons stored away, But what's your plan for replenishing that supply? Do you know where to find natural water sources near your home? Do you have the tools and skills to purify water on a large scale? These are the kinds of questions that separate short-term preparedness from true long-term survival. Energy is another big one. If the grid goes down for an extended period, how will you power your essential devices? Solar panels, hand crank generators, and even basic battery backups can be lifesavers in a prolonged crisis. But like everything else, they need to be tested and maintained to ensure they'll work when you need them. One of the best ways to prepare for the future is by learning from the past. History is full of lessons for preppers, but too often people ignore them. Let's look at some examples. During Hurricane Katrina, thousands of people were stranded because they didn't have an evacuation plan. Many of them assumed help would come quickly, but it didn't. The lesson here: never rely on outside help. Always have a plan to take care of yourself and your family. Or consider the Great Depression. People who survived that era didn't have stockpiles of gear or fancy gadgets. They made it through with resourcefulness, community support, and the ability to stretch what little they had. That's a powerful reminder that mindset and skills often matter more than material possessions. Even more recent events, like the COVID-19 pandemic, have valuable lessons for preppers. Remember how quickly shelves emptied out in the early days? That's a perfect example of why you need to stock up before a crisis, not during one. And let's not forget the importance of adaptability. No one saw a global pandemic coming, but those who adapted quickly, whether by learning new skills or finding alternative resources, fared much better than those who stuck to rigid plans. The takeaway here is simple. Study the past, learn from the mistakes and successes of others, and use that knowledge to improve your own preparedness. History has a way of repeating itself, and the more you know, the better equipped you'll be to handle whatever comes next. Now let's talk about communication. This is an area that often gets overlooked, but it's absolutely critical in a crisis. Imagine this: the power's out, the cell towers are down, and you have no way to contact your family or neighbors. How do you coordinate? How do you know what's happening outside your immediate area? Without a solid communication plan, you're flying blind. The first step is to have reliable tools. Two-way radios, ham radios, or even simple walkie-talkies can keep you connected when traditional communication methods fail. But owning the tools isn't enough. You need to know how to use them. Do you know the right frequencies to monitor for emergency broadcasts? Have you practiced using your radio to communicate with others? These are things you should figure out now, not during a crisis. Coordination within your family or group is just as important. Does everyone know what to do if you get separated? Do you have a rendezvous point? A backup plan if that location becomes unsafe? Clear roles and responsibilities can prevent chaos and confusion when the pressure is on. And let's not forget about intelligence gathering. Staying informed about what's happening in your area can be a game changer. Whether it's monitoring police scanners, checking local news, or simply talking to your neighbors, having good information allows you to make better decisions. In a crisis, knowledge really is power. So, there you have it. The top reasons why some preppers fail, even though they think they're ready. It's not just about having the right gear or a big stockpile. It's about mindset, skills, adaptability, and understanding the bigger picture. Prepping is a journey, not a destination, and there's always room to learn and improve. If you take one thing away from this video, let it be this: preparedness isn't a one-time thing. It's a way of life. Stay humble, stay adaptable, and keep working to fill the gaps in your plan. Because at the end of the day, survival isn't about being perfect. It's about being ready to face whatever comes your way. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss future videos. And if you're not already on my newsletter, sign up today to get my free ebook, Surviving Civil Unrest, a complete guide. It's full of tips and strategies you can start using right now. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay prepared, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.